Hey everybody, this is Coach Floyd. Just want to give you a quick video about lessons 6 through 8. The first thing we're going to do is just talk briefly about lesson 6. They're pretty easy, but I want to go through this general for loops slides real quick. So as we go through here again, it's showing the format of the for loop with the three parts: the initialize, okay, the test, which is a Boolean expression, and the increment. For these two exercises that you're going to do for lesson 6, the increment is what is going to be changing. Okay, so here again is our initialize, where we start to a 0. Our test is our Boolean expression, usually a greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to symbol. And then our increment. Now what we're going to be doing is showing different increments in these couple of exercises. Okay, so here's an example of a countdown. So usually our for loops count up to something. However, this time it's showing an example of how we could count down. We could start our I at a high number. We could run it while it's greater than 0, and we can decrease down to 0. Okay, so these are a couple different things. Now, one thing that you got to watch out for is we get used to using a plus plus right here. If I put a plus plus right here, then I would start at 10 and it would go up. By doing that, it never hits 0. So what happens is you hit run code and your browser just starts spinning. Okay, it locks up, it freezes, and it crashes. You have to close the tab, you have to open a new one. That is called an infinite loop. You got to be careful of those. But if your browser crashes and just spins, that means that your loop is messed up and you need to come back through here and figure out how and why. If you get stuck and cannot figure it out, please message me so I can log in and help you. I can tell you exactly what it is and I will help you through that. Okay? So here's an example of a different increment, and this is kind of what you're going to be dealing with. I can use my plus equals here to add multiple numbers. Okay, so instead of just doing a plus plus where I add 1, this time I'm going to do a plus equals 2. So every time I run my for loop, I'm adding 2 to I. So I'm going 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, it's incrementing. I could use a multiplication sign here and multiply by 2's every time. If I use multiplication, my I does not need to start at 0 because anything times 0 is always 0. So I would use a 1 right there. Okay, so I equals 1 anytime I need to use multiplication. I could use subtraction, I could use division, I could use any of my mathematical symbols right here, just depending on what it's asking for. Okay, so this is a format you need to pay attention to for these two exercises. Okay, so that's lesson 6. I'm going to close that out and go over here to lesson 7. Now there's no slides to lesson 7, so we're just going to kind of talk through this. What this is about is using our for loop to add numbers together. Okay, beginning in the last lesson we were printing them. However, on this one we want to add them together. So what this program does is it sets a minimum and maximum number. It runs our for loop from the minimum to the maximum. Now, I could just as easily put a 1 and 100 right here. That's fine. My equal sign means I'm going to include the number 100 because what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to add all of the numbers from 1 to 100 inclusive to create a total sum. So that means I'm doing 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 all the way up. So to do that, I have to create a variable to hold that sum. So I create a sum. I started at 0 because I haven't added anything into it yet, so I have to start it at 0. I run my for loop from 1 up to 100, including 100 because of the equal sign. I increase plus plus. That just says that I'm going to hit every number from 1 to 100. So this is increasing I. My sum uses the plus equals to I. So the very first time this runs, sum is 0, so 0 plus equals I is 1, so sum is now 1. We increase I to 2, sum is still 1, plus equals 2, so now sum is 3. I increases to 3, sum is 3, plus equals 3, so the sum is now 6. Okay, so I'm continually adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and sum is just keeping a running total of all of those numbers. Okay, so after my for loop ends, remember I have to close my for loop. After it ends, then I can do a print line to say the total sum. So when I run this, the sum I get is 5,050. Now, I could change this. Okay, so if I needed to find all of the numbers multiplied by each other, I could do multiplication. Okay, and I'm not going to run that because it might take it. Let's do from 1 to 10, just so it doesn't take it as long. There we go. Look what happened. What I did was I had my sum at 0. 0 times 1 is 0, 0 times 2 is 0, 0 times 3. Okay, so I have to change this to a 1. If I'm doing multiplication, I cannot have a 0. And when I run it, so 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8 times 9 times 10 is 3,628,800. Okay, so this is just another example of how I can use different ways, use my for loop in different ways, and use different mathematical expressions, numbers, everything I need to do within that. Okay. Now, one last thing that we need to talk about, because you will have a exercise using this, is what's called a double for loop. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this down to about a 3. I don't need a sum in this. So a double for loop means that I'm running 2 different counters. Okay, so I need something that shows 2 totally different numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a for loop again right inside of my first one. Now with this, I still have to do my 3 parts, so I have to create a variable. However, I cannot use the same variable. I cannot. Okay, because it'll get confused on which I I'm talking about, and it will not work. So the variable that I always use on my second for loop is a j. Okay, so I can set this to run the exact same. J is less than or equal to 3 and j plus plus. Now I get a lot of students that just copy and paste this one and then change the i's to j's. Totally fine if you do that. However, a lot of people forget to change all of the i's to j, and they like to leave this one at an I. This is going to cause you to have an infinite loop because j starts at 1. It is not increasing because you're increasing I, so j is always going to be less than 3, and that loop will loop forever. So make sure that all of these variables are the same and all of these variables are the same. So now what we're going to do is we're going to print each of these. Print line I. I want to put a space between them. A space is a piece of text, so I have to add a space withheld in quotation marks. And here we go. Okay, don't want to print that anymore. So as I do this, what it's going to do is it's going to show me what I is, and then it's going to show me what j is each time these loops run. And there we go. So the very first time this runs, here's what we get. We get 1, 1. Well, let's look how we did that. So this for loop runs first. So it sets I to 1. 1 is less than 3, so we come down here. J is 1. 1 is less than 3, so we come down here. Well, we just saw that I is 1, so it prints 1, and J is 1. Okay, so that's how we get our 1, 1. Now we are currently, this line is stuck in this for loop. So this for loop is the only one that's going to run right now. So j increases to 2. We come back down here. I is still 1, but j has increased to 2. We are still stuck in this for loop. Okay, so j increases to 3. We come back here. I is still 1. J is now 3. When j increases the next time, it is 4. It is no longer less than or equal to 3. It stops. We come down here. We jump back up into this for loop. We increase I to 2. 2 is less than 3. So now we come back down here. Sorry. This one resets j to 1. 1 is less than 3. We come down here. I is now 2, and j is reset back to 1. J increases to 2. J increases to 3. So for every one I, you get however many j's are going to run. Okay, if there were 10 j's, then you would have 10 ones and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you would have 10 twos and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so it just continually goes. You'll need to use this on the all dice values. You will need a double for loop or a nested for loop, for lack of a better word. I like to call them doubles. Some people call them nested. All you're saying is it's inside of this other one. Let's look at the 3 exercises. You want to write a program that asks the user for a starting number and an ending number. Use a for loop to add all the numbers from first to last. So you just saw this over here. I'm going to reset this and let's look at it real quick. So basically what you're doing here is you are adding all the numbers from here to here. That is what your better sum is asking you to do, except instead of setting a minimax, it wants you to ask the user for a minimax. So ask the user for 2 numbers, set up your for loop to go from the minimum to the maximum. Add everything in between. So if they gave you a 6 as a minimum and an 8 as a maximum, then you do 6, 7, 8. If they gave you a 1 as a minimum, a 10 as a maximum, then you do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 all the way up to 10. Okay? A factorial. A lot of people haven't reached factorials in math yet. Okay, so if you're not sure what a factorial is, don't look at all this. This is exactly what it is. This is the true definition, except it just gets confusing. All you need to know is a factorial is called, so when you see this in math, that means 4 factorial. All that means is to find the answer of 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. If you had 5 factorial, it would be 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So whatever n is, okay, so in this case, 4 is n. So n is whatever your number is. So if n was 2, it would be 2 times 1. If it was 10, it would be 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. The good thing about factorials, though, in a for loop is you can go from high to low, or because it's multiplication, you could also say 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. This, okay, so n right here, if our n is 5, then we could write a program to go 4 or 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Or we can write it to go 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. It's going to be the same thing. Luckily, we had an example over here that showed us how to add 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, right? So all we're doing is we're basically taking that example right here, putting in our numbers. Our minimum's always 1 in a factorial. Our maximum is given to us. And then we're going to multiply. Okay? So that's all you're doing. A factorial is very, very easy. Don't get bogged down by all the n's and the stuff. All you need to do is loop from 1 to n and multiply all the numbers. Okay? And the last one is the all dice values. So you're rolling 2 dice. You want to nest a loop, so you need a double for loop. Don't use I for both, and print these. This has a comma and a space between each number. That is a piece of text that must be held within quotation marks. So remember, this, the first one is a variable, the last one is a variable, and then you have text in between, so make sure you have those addition signs to string those together. Okay, so I hope this helps. You also have the next lesson, lesson 8, It is on the randomizer. Please watch the video that is in CodeHS. I think it does a really good job of explaining it. If you have any trouble, please reach out to me. Let me know and I will help you through. I hope you have a good day.